I have a fun fact for you, Hannah.
Oh my gosh.
Did you know that I used to know the entire Gettysburg Address?
I'm not surprised.
I don't know the whole thing anymore, but I know the very, very start of it. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now that nation is engaged in a great civil war. And then that's it. That's all that I know. Yay!
I have a fun fact for you.
Yeah?
I can say all of the presidents in order from start to finish.
That's actually very, that's cool.
Yeah. I'm not going to demonstrate because
it'd
take a very long time.
Yeah.
Yes, just me. I can do it fast, though.
Yeah?
Yeah. Should I just
Yes,
do it?
How fast can you do
Great.
it?
Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Harrison, Tyler, Taylor, Fillmore, Pierce, Buchanan, Lincoln, Johnson, Grant, Hayes, Garfield, Arthur, Cleveland, Harrison, Cleveland, McKinley, Roosevelt, Taft, Wilson, Harding, Coolidge, Hoover, Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden.
I like how you got stuck on the last one that we actually know about.
Well, when I learned it in song form as a kid, it ended with Barack.
Barack. That's cool, though. I can respect that.
Yeah. Thank you.
High fives all around.
Thank you.
All right. And with that, hi, guys. Welcome back to the Quadcast Podcast.
Da-da-da-da.
Woo! What's going on in here?
And they were roommates.
Anyway.
All right.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
Alrighty, I think. So, the presidential debate was what was that, Wednesday?
It was the 10th.
The 10th.
Right?
Whatever the 10th was. 5 days ago.
Tuesday.
And, I mean, we all watched it. It was a good time. You guys came in late, and I think it was the roommates all talking and joking, and then me sitting there going, shh! I was like, shut up! Because I wanted to actually hear what was going on. But it's totally fair.
And the subtitles were delayed, so you couldn't read
oh my gosh,
it
was so annoying.
It was really bad.
Yeah. But I was thinking, like, after that, I was like, we should talk about this. Not just the debate, but in general, politics from the eyes of not only college students, but also going to a very, very specific university that's Christian and conservative.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, coming from a very liberal school to this,
yeah,
I got a lot of things bouncing around in my noggin about politics. And
you made the biggest jump of them all.
Yes. But I guess, I mean, we could just start. What were your thoughts on the presidential debate?
Oh dear.
Because obviously we are the most accomplished and well thought of people who should be talking about this with all of our information and degrees.
20 years of knowledge that I've gained as an American
all
citizen.
The knowledge, yeah. But
I don't know. It's kind of hard to develop solid thoughts on something that, let's be honest, didn't really happen. It wasn't really a debate.
No.
And that's something that's always been my first. This isn't even special to this debate. This is honestly just politics since the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows how to debate anymore on a public stage.
Agree.
It's just public slander. It's saying why I'm better and this person's trash. But I grew up on debate teams. They're not debating each other. They're debating policies and letting the American people choose. Instead, it's turning it into an us or them, I'm right, you're wrong kind of situation.
And it's so personal.
It's
so
personal.
I don't care about you. I care about what you're going to do for this country.
Exactly.
It's not about you. You're just the spokesperson for your team who's trying to win the heart of America to make it better however you think that works.
And that plays into it, too. The president role is not as powerful as people think it is.
Exactly.
It's the Senate that matters.
Yes.
But the president has pull in the sense of they really impact the strength of the party that's in House or Senate at the time. And obviously, the presidents, they've claimed more power than they should have based off of how the founding fathers set it out at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But people make it such a big deal about the personality of the president.
Yeah.
And I honestly think, there are plenty of people in politics, I don't like their personality.
Yeah. But
if I like their politics, what they're standing for, and I trust them to actually do something about it, then I'm going to vote for them, even if I don't like them as a person. And that goes for so many different people in, local elections. There are people that, because I live in a small town, I know people that are in, politics in the area. I've met them. I might not like them as a person, but I voted for them because I know what they stand for. They're the better option.
And that's so fair.
Yeah.
And I think that, I remember I sat back at one point, and I don't know if I said it out loud, but I definitely thought I was like, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that I was watching a middle school spitting match.
Yes, you did, yeah.
I was like, what is this? And I think you said it best, what'd you say? Obama was the last well-spoken president?
Obama was the last well-spoken president.
Yeah. You don't have to agree with everything that he did or everything that he said, but one, he said it very, very well.
Yeah.
And everything that he said, he did, basically. Some things of that I don't agree with. Yeah. But he was very, very clear with what he was going to do. And he had the education or the experience behind what he was doing.
Yeah.
To just be a really, really well-spoken politician, which is so important.
It's so important. And, like, if you read, I don't even know which, I don't know if you can attest to this as somebody who went to public school. They don't really teach from the original Founding Fathers' personal documents anymore. Like, collected works of Thomas Jefferson. Not something that he wrote for politics, but the way he thought and other subjects that he engaged with, that's not really something that they politicize or share. That's not something people read for fun anymore.
Yeah.
People don't talk like that. And if you read even just, like, personal letters from these people, like, if you read any letters that, like, John Adams wrote, or Hamilton wrote, or Washington wrote, just to friends and, associates, it's so over our heads because, first of all, that's just not how we communicate anymore, but also, they were so well-spoken. They were so incredibly gifted with the meaning of words.
Yeah.
And we've fallen very far.
I agree.
And there's a number of reasons that I'm sure that, a number of things that could be blamed on. But I really think that our governing officials should be held to a higher standard.
I agree.
I don't want to watch a debate. I know some people overseas, they watch American politics for fun. And
I can see it. I bet it would be very entertaining for people who aren't directly.
Yeah, if it's not affecting you, like that would be hilarious.
It's like a soap opera.
It's like it's a sitcom. Like I'm sitting here watching. It's like a parody.
Like where's the laugh track?
Exactly. People should be applauding and laughing in the background. It's just it's not. It's very discouraging to see how.
It's very unfortunate.
Again, it's the middle school. It's the middle school spitting match.
It's a middle school spitting match.
Yeah.
And I think that you saying that the government should be held more accountable is spot on. I also think that a big part of it is the school side, the school departments and stuff like that, and how they run it, because that's so true. And it's interesting that you brought up my schooling versus your schooling. And I mean, you were homeschooled all the way through. I did private school, and then I did public school for high school. Private school. I mean, middle school, I don't remember that well. My brain cuts off that era of my life. But
blocked.
When we went into public school, and this is no offense to anyone who's in public school, because I totally understand it's the system that you're in. Yeah. But when we went into public school, we were leagues above others. Yeah. I would never say that we were learning Founding Father documents or anything like that. But our concept and grasp of history and how our country ran was so high above everyone else. And then on top of that, I don't know how it works for every single school district, but my district in Colorado, we had history every single year. Yeah. Only a single semester of that was specifically American government.
That's wild.
And how curriculum works, at least for my school.
Yeah.
Sophomore year was fall semester was American government. Spring semester was economics. Both such important things to learn in the smallest gap that you can possibly do it. And I think that's so dangerous because I don't think people understand how the government works. And if you if you don't understand how the government works, then you can't hold it accountable.
Exactly. You know? And that's how they've grown in so much power.
Yeah.
Compared to how it was at the very beginning.
Well, I think that you see that a lot with, I don't know about you, but I really like watching those, like the street interviews.
Yes,
where people just ask questions. And a lot that have been going around lately for obvious reasons. People are talking about Trump or Kamala. And I was watching a bunch of them, and a lot of people were saying, the person would ask, and they go, oh, Kamala. And I was like, okay, whatever. I might not agree with that, but why do you say that? I like hearing what they say, and a lot of them, the guy will ask that to me, like, okay, well, why do you say this? And because then they'll bring up, did you see what she did as vice president? And people are like, well, vice president doesn't matter that much anyways. As president, you can do more things. Yeah. Constitutionally speaking, the vice president has more power than the president. They're considered the president of the Senate, which is the biggest part of the government. Yeah. So it's mind-boggling. Like, even at the most basis level of understanding, people don't understand what the positions are for, much less how someone should be,
like, operating within it.
Yeah. And it's so scary to think about.
So scary.
And it's just mind-boggling. I can't wrap my head around that. Like, you don't know how this works. In the long run, you're voting based off of things that you don't understand. And to an extent, I blame the person voting, but to more extent, it's how you're raised and it's how the system you grew up in treated the situation. Like, what are you supposed to do about that?
Yeah.
That's how you learned. And it's such a dangerous thing to get around. Which is why I think that more people weren't fazed by the debate, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they're like, oh, okay, this is how it went. But a lot of what I see here is people going, well, my side did so great. And like, especially because here at Liberty, let's be honest, most people are here for Trump.
Yes.
Like, that's just how it goes.
Yes.
I don't like Trump, but that's a majority of Liberty is that way.
Yeah.
And I think that it's because in their minds, they watch the debate and they're like, Trump did so well and Harris wrecked herself. And I was like, Trump did horrendously.
Yeah.
I think we timed it too. The first 9 minutes, he was on top of it.
He was doing so. I walked in late because I had practice, and so I come in it was like halfway through the debate, and I remember the first thing I was like, "Look at him! He's being articulate. This is so much better, so much better than 2016."
Yeah,
I was like, he's growing. Like,
I think about probably 5 to 10 minutes after
it's like 5 to 10 minutes right after,
just like
devolved
into the ground, crash and burn, and I was like, "Oh my lord, you can't be serious right now." And that's I felt that way since the primaries. As soon as I remember, I was talking with Wendy about it too when the primaries hit, and I was livid. I don't know if you remember the day when they found that out. I was so upset because I don't like Trump. Yeah. I think that he did fine for the country.
He's an excellent businessman.
Yes, his first round, I think that is what the country needed.
Yeah.
He did very, very well. His policies were on point, and he did basically every single thing that he said that he would. And that's so important. And I don't have to like his personality to respect that. My biggest issue with Trump is how his personality divided America.
Yes.
And so when the primaries for this presidency rolled around, where everything is kind of a crap show, and the Republican Party is trying to get back their grasp on politics and trying to work their way back up, why would they choose
the most polarizing person?
Yeah. I think that we needed some middle ground because that way it goes enough with the far right Republicans that they would be fine. We'll do them, but it also connects with the moderate Democrats who just want life to be normal.
Yeah, not every Democrat is over, like, far left wing swing, all sorts of things. There are some people that just prefer, like, they value social policy.
Exactly.
Like, I'm in social work. I see it everywhere. Yeah. I understand why people vote the way they do. Mm-hmm. Like, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I might have varying values in that sense, but I understand why more moderate Democrats vote the way they do.
Exactly.
And that's a wild statement on Liberty's campus, I feel like. Yeah. But yeah, and I genuinely feel like the Republican vote, especially with the Democratic, like, options that they had for this presidency, because it was either going to be Biden or Harris.
Yeah.
And with the options that they had for this election, I feel like the Republican Party could have won so many moderate Democrats and independent voters over if they had chosen a more neutral character.
I agree.
And again, I stand by this. I think that Trump, like you said, was exactly what the economy needed
at the time.
From the time from 2016 to 2020, he did a lot of great things.
Yeah.
I don't like him, like, personality-wise. Like, I just feel like he's a businessman but not a politician.
Yeah.
And I'm no fan of, like, the politician stereotype, like, personality. I think that that's also very dangerous, and I don't like having career politicians in office because it's just not something I trust. I believe in deep state.
That's it.
And so I think that Trump was exactly what the country needed at the time.
Yes, but it's a different country now, and it's a different set of circumstances.
Exactly.
The country doesn't like him.
No, in the world, I think that's the big thing. The world is very different.
Yes.
And I don't think either candidate for either side is
not cut out for foreign policy.
No, neither of them are cut out for foreign policy.
It's so concerning.
Exactly. And that's a concerning part with Harris as well. I know I have several friends who vote Democrat that were very upset to find out that after Biden stepped down, Harris was just automatically put into place. Like,
that's so unconstitutional.
It's so unconstitutional that she was just automatically
It's almost dictatorial.
Exactly. That's not how the Democratic, like, the Democratic Party, they didn't have any sort of primaries or election process. She was just instituted as the presidential option.
And that makes me so upset for Democrats.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you take away that decision for them?
Exactly. And I know I think that Biden and Harris, they had some of the lowest approval ratings from their own voters.
For a good reason.
And there's so many people, they really value their beliefs on that side, and they should have had the opportunity
to choose
when their president, our president, stepped down and said he's like, I'm not going into the race. They should have had the option to
choose somebody.
To make a new choice for themselves. Yeah. And that was taken away from them.
Yeah.
And so I feel like on both sides, it's just deeply unfair. The American people are they've kind of been screwed over.
Yeah.
By the system.
And that's so fair.
Yeah. What are, I guess, returning back to just, the beloved American system.
Yes.
And back on the debate, what were some highlights for you? Just things that still, because obviously they touched on so many topics, and some topics they touched on so many times.
Yeah.
What are like the 3 things that you recall the most from the debate?
From the debate?
Yeah.
Well, I can't not say the fact that there's 10 million immigrants coming in through the southern border, because he said that about 12 million times.
Even when the question had nothing to do with immigration.
Yeah, I think that's what stuck out to me, is when they were talking about what?
I think they
were talking about what, January 6th, and he was like, the immigrants on the southern border. I'm like, I also think it's a problem that needs to be solved, but sir, that's not what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
So I think Trump's inability Trump and Harris's both inability to answer the questions with any actual substance.
There's nothing there.
So that was the main thing that I noticed. The second thing I noticed, and I mean, I was keeping my little tracker, Harris's use of pathos.
Yes.
Because every single, every single time she says something, I go, pathos. Because at the end of the day, everything that she said revolved around feelings. And that's a great model when you're trying to keep people on your side. But she said all these things, and then I'm like, yes, but what's your answer to it? You know? Like, they'd be like, well, how are you going to do this thing for the economy? I feel so bad for the American people. I grew up in a middle-class system,
So
and
great,
they can't say lies, and I was like, great. How are you gonna fix it?
Yeah.
So like that whole shtick right there.
Yeah, it's like, okay,
no substance.
Good to know that you feel for them and that you're on their side.
And it's good to mention that. But
what's
it's also good to
solution?
mention the solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was probably the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. I think that I just blanked on what it was. Oh, you weren't here for it. The very first question they asked, I think anyways, when we tuned in, it was the first about the economy. So they started flying off like, hey, what are you guys going to do about
everybody's
the economy?
biggest concern right now?
Yeah.
I can't afford to go to the store. Like,
well, and this is when I leaned forward and I was listening, and so the mic goes to Harris, and then someone in the quad made a joke about Harris. And like, oh, she's not going to answer it, and everyone started laughing, and I was like, shut up! Because I was like, I want to hear what she says. And it really stuck with me. She brought up 2 things. Starting families in small businesses. Both very, very important. Yeah. And she talked about tax breaks for small businesses and starting like things to help starting families, and all I could think was, okay, what about the college kids and the single people and the people who already have families? I felt like her whole answer, and then Trump didn't even talk about it that much. Yeah. But the only thing that I got out of the economy question is there's a very specific set of people who are getting anything out of this legislation, and they're the only, it was like there's a priority for these people. Yeah. And I was like, that's fantastic. One, I'll believe it when I see it when it happens. But on top of that, I was like, you didn't even speak to a huge percentage of people who are going to be voting for you or against you. And so I mean, maybe it's selfish that that's what I thought of because I am a college kid. Yeah. And just the fact that, like, even if it wasn't college kids in general, just young adults and stuff like that, or, the elderly. Yeah. I was like, you don't talk about any of this stuff, and we're extremely affected by it. We're the ones inheriting the system that you're trying to make, and we're not even a part of the decision. Yeah. I think that it's a very stupid way to answer the question in order to get people on your side, because she made it, maybe it wasn't her intention, but she made it very, very clear what her priorities are. Yeah. And it's not a big group, especially college kids are her demographic. Yeah. And I was like, I was so shocked by that. Yeah. Because I would have assumed that she would have pandered to her audience. She didn't even talk about them. Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that was number 2. And then number 3, from the debate, I think probably my most disappointing part about the whole debate was Trump's lack of an answer for the southern border debate. Because he talked about it so much. Yeah. And I think that it's such an important issue that we have to talk about. And the moderators did a great job by asking him a question flat, like, okay, you keep saying this, what's your plan for it? Yeah. And then the moderator here was like, are you going to do this? Are you going to go door to door? And Trump goes, yes. And he goes, okay, elaborate on that. Trump didn't speak to it at all about his plan. And I was like,
It felt, you know what it felt like? Yeah. It felt very much so like Harris's response to gun control. Yes. It felt along the exact same lines. Like, are you gonna go door to door and check for assault rifles? Yeah, like what's your plan?
What's your plan?
And again, I don't even care about what policy you're talking about. It's you don't have a plan. And I feel like I got a little bit more of a plan lined out from Trump, but it was like pulling teeth. It was like pulling teeth. And at one point, which I'm very glad that he at least admitted it, but it is still scary. At one point, he just said, I don't have a plan yet. And I don't remember what subject it was touching on.
I think it was the economy.
I thought it was IVF or abortion. It was something along those lines.
He was really, because that whole debate, he was really, really clear about his abortion and his abortion, ideas. And Harris kept bringing up the Trump abortion ban and stuff like that. And because it just became a whole fight of Trump going, no, I'm not banning abortion. She goes, yes, you are. And then back and forth. I think that when they were talking about, where he was like, I don't have a plan yet, I'm pretty sure it was economic stuff.
Okay.
I'll have to look back. But no matter what it was, I respect that he didn't lie.
Yeah, he didn't lie.
He didn't say... he didn't beat around the bush. He was very clear, I don't have a plan yet. But I will once I'm in, or I'm going to work for it. He was like, my team is working on it.
The fact that he had a flat out, I don't have a plan yet, instead of beating around the bush, made me feel very confident in the fact that he's actively working on the plan.
Yes. But then on the flip side,
he doesn't have a plan.
Yes. It's like, oh my gosh, we're that far gone that he doesn't have a plan.
Yeah.
And Harris's plan is just keep it the same or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that one. But whatever is like...
Well,
it's so scary.
And this is my biggest concern with Harris, is that she is currently
one of the most powerful people in the country right now.
She's promising to do all these things. You've had 4 years to do them.
And that's such a fair argument.
Yeah. And so it's hard to trust that even if she did share a plan, which she didn't really share a plan, there were a couple things where she touched on having some ideas, and it was like the bones of a plan.
Yeah.
But again, it was also very vague. They were just too busy trash talking each other.
Yeah.
But even if she did have a solid plan, I don't have the trust for her to carry anything out. Whether I like the plan or not, I don't trust. It feels very much so like the lame duck term of presidency.
Yeah.
It really just feels like it's a lame duck for all 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of y'all who don't know what the lame duck is, just in case you missed that lesson in school, your
school didn't go over it.
Or your school didn't go over it. A lame duck is the term for presidency typically in between an election and when they're actually out of office. It's kind of like the closing portion of a president, when they can't really do anything.
But it was the entire 4 years.
It really felt like the entire 4 years. Mm-hmm. Things just felt very out of control. And
I don't think I can remember any hugely major good thing that happened for either side.
Yeah.
You know? All it was bad decision after bad decision, or controversial decision that erupted in a whole lot of debate in discourse throughout the country. But nothing where people were like, okay.
We got a lot of talking in circles.
Yes.
And, I mean, for one of my homework assignments right now, I'm having to research and curate my opinions on a policy involving Title IX, which is actually the whole subject for another episode, I'm sure.
A very sanctioned subject,
yes.
I'm sure.
But actually, that was the one thing that I recall from the Biden administration. Like something that they actually actively did day one of Biden's presidency.
Yeah.
He the administration reached out, and they worked with the Department of Education to change the definitions of Title IX's terms in reference to who gets protected. Okay. And by changing those definitions, they increased the scope of the protections and provisions to include the LGBTQ community, which, sure, they're people. They do deserve protection from sexual harassment. Everybody does. Man, woman, whatever else you think you are, it does not matter.
Yeah.
People should have that ability. If you're harassed or if you are abused or any sort of thing.
You should have the right.
Yeah, if you're being discriminated against based off of your gender, that's not fair to you as a person. But the shift in those terms was so drastic that by giving so many new provisions to people with varied gender identity, that it removed safety and provisions from women.
Yeah.
And so there's a tension between the two. And that right there wasn't even put fully into place. It is still under debate 4 years later. And that was the first thing he did. And that just really comes to show it's
the lame duck.
It's the lame duck. You can say so many things and start so many things, but really it's just a lot of talking in circles.
I agree.
And everything is so divided.
Yes.
Everything is so divided. And this goes way back to what you were saying about Harris's economy and tax breaks argument at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And it's really, it's the concept of equity and choosing certain people to receive more assistance than others. And I think that to an extent, like, there's validity in the sense of, like, there are some people that need more help than other people need help. Yeah. And help should be available to those. But when you are in an economic crisis, I think currently the statistic, don't quote me on this, but I think currently the statistic, our generation won't be able to afford houses until we're in our 40s.
That's unfortunate.
Yes. So we're going to be living on rent until we're in our 40s, unless we happen to just get really lucky in life. Yeah. Or if something in the economy drastically changes. And seeing that, like, a lot of people need help. Mm-hmm. But by choosing the equity route, you are causing more division for people because there's some people that will get the gold and other people that will be left behind. Yeah. And it has very little to do with anything that's in their control. You can't control, like, what color your skin was when you were born. Mm-hmm. You can't control what socioeconomic status you were born into. You can't control the way you were treated or raised as a child. These are all factors that shape you so much in your experience, but you are not in control of those, and you shouldn't be politically punished for any of it.
Yeah, on either side.
Yeah, on either side.
On either side. And I think that that's so fair. Yeah. And I think that the whole lame duck mentality that we've had goes back to the polarization and the division within our country. Because I think what I've seen a whole lot of, and what's really pissing people off on both sides, is that everything is to the extremes. You know? Yeah. Like, this country doesn't understand how compromise works. No. Like, when you get someone who goes into office, especially, let's say, the Democratic Party coming into office after the Republican Party. Yeah. You cannot just go to the extreme polarized, like, the opposite side. It's going to tear the country in half. Exactly. That's, like, it just boggles my mind that I don't care what side of the aisle you're on or what your own beliefs are. Common sense would say you don't tear apart the lives and the foundation of our country for your political ideology without first taking steps to get measures in place where it's on a more level field before even trying those things. Yeah. And I mean, it goes back to what I was saying. I think that we should have had a moderate for the primary. Same thing there. I'm like, you can't just choose the extreme people. Yeah. And gosh, it just, I don't know. It really frustrates me because it's just at the end of the day, it's these people with all these values, and you can have whatever values you want. I have friends on both sides, and I hear both sides, and I understand both sides, but those sides cannot be playing tug-of-war with people's lives. Yeah. It's mind-boggling to me.
Well, in being in the extremes, there's so much tension on either side that game of tug-of-war is going to tear the country apart eventually. Yes. And there's so much pressure.
And when it becomes a competitive game of tug-of-war, sides forget the importance of the other side. Yeah. Like, I've had conversations with friends on both sides of the aisle where I say flat out, I think this country needs Democrats and Republicans. Yeah. Both are essential to this country.
There's so many documents out there about the necessity of a two-party system for us.
People are so quick to shut me down on that. Yeah. But I believe that wholeheartedly. Like, I'm in criminal justice. I work in a very, pretty much right-leaning environment most of the time.
Very different.
But I've also worked in very left-leaning fields. Yeah. Like, when I worked at, I worked for a company that worked with traumatic brain injury survivors. Yeah. Very, very left-leaning. Very left-leaning.
Well, it's welfare. It's welfare policy.
Well, the Democrats do welfare and humanity better than Republicans, 100%. Yeah. And you need that in this country. Yeah. And so it boggles my mind, this idea that you can't have both. Yeah. You know? The country's always going to be slightly leaning around one way, depending on who's in power.
But it shouldn't have to be a pendulum swinging so far to the side that the other side gets destroyed or hurt.
There shouldn't be a chasm between the two.
No, you can have it swing side to side gently. Yes. And that is very healthy. Yeah. And that prevents things from being done too quickly, but it also keeps things from being done too slowly. You know, there's a balance. Yeah. And that's actually what I found, because on our trip back over here, you were talking about, like, just the extremes. On our trip back over here to come back to school this year, we stopped at the Eisenhower Museum in Kansas.
Love
And
that man.
something that I hadn't known, you know, we're sitting there, like, reading all the history, something I hadn't known about Eisenhower.
It's one of my favorite things about him.
Yeah. Both parties wanted him.
As the primary.
As their primary.
He's my favorite president.
He was a character that was so unifying.
Yes.
And America really needs that. But I genuinely believe, and I don't even think this is a politics issue, I think it's a cultural issue.
Yeah.
We've been so polarized, and I think part of it has to, which I'm going to be that person, I think part of it can be blamed on the screens.
That's right.
And we don't have to really face up for the things that we say. And
that's so true.
People are very comfortable becoming extreme because they're never going to be confronted by the reality. I know so many people that stand against social welfare because they never actually have to talk to a homeless person. Yeah. Do I think that the social welfare system is fantastic? I'm in social work. No, it's honestly horrendous and hurts more people than it helps sometimes. I think it needs a major reform. But
reform is different than eradication.
Yeah, if you're not going to treat everybody else with kindness and generosity, the social welfare system was put in place because there were people that were being ignored.
Yeah.
Local generosity was not enough. And do I think that it should be the way it is right now? Absolutely not. But there's a balance to be had.
Yes, you can't just get rid of it.
You can't just get rid of it. And that's why we need somebody who can unify both sides and see rationality on both sides. But we also live in a culture where it's cool to be extreme.
Yes.
And you're not held accountable for your extreme views. You can find somebody who thinks the exact same way as you anywhere you go.
Exactly.
And so it's mob mentality.
Yes.
Everywhere you go, you can find a safe haven for your extremist views.
And if you don't have extremist views, you get booted to the curb.
Yeah,
which is something that I see a lot here.
Which is, I want to touch back on that in a second, but that was something that I actually really saw interesting because I was the only remotely conservative person at my last workplace.
Yeah.
I was also the only Christian. You know, it was me.
The diversity hire and all the wrong ways that no one wants.
I was the reverse diversity hire. But what I really realized after talking to all these people, because I don't think work is a place for politics, so I really just kept quiet. Yeah. I let them tell me all about what they believed. And nobody is believing these things in malicious ways. Those are genuine values because they see certain people that they want to see kept safe. Yeah. And everybody is coming at it from a different angle. Some people want to see, you know, this overall good. Other people want to seek the well-being of like their families. Yeah. And both are very valid.
Yes.
And you have to be able to address both. And I genuinely know so many people that felt so jilted by their options. So many people that were upset that Trump was going to be the person they have to vote for. And
that's
other
why
people,
I'm upset.
Exactly. And then there were people that were so upset that Biden or Harris were the people that they had to vote for. Yeah. I know so many people that wanted to vote for RFK.
I liked RFK.
But
do I think that he would have made it to office? No. The Kennedy curse would have taken him out. But
I
did like RFK.
But the fact that I think he proved an interesting point because there was actually so much pull for RFK, especially in our generation, I feel like. Because there's so many people that didn't like the extremes.
Yeah.
So far red and so far blue that you can't see rationality on either side. You can't even have a basic conversation with somebody. Yeah. And that was what came through in the debate is like, you can't look at this opponent in the eye and be polite. You can't say one nice thing about them. But that's why I feel like so many people were drawn to RFK because they're like, he's somewhere in the middle. I've not seen somebody in the middle in years. And
at least someone who's made waves and become like a public face.
Yeah.
Because we've always had independence stuff, but they never make it that far.
No, they never make it that far.
And they never, like, they're never in the media. Yeah. And RFK was there.
And I'm not gonna, I'm not saying this to, like, bash RFK by any means, but I really don't think that he made it that far necessarily because of him. I think he made it that far because the only two other options everybody hated as well.
That's true.
I think that he was blasted up as an option for the time that he was still an option kind of thing. But now I know so many people that still plan on voting for him, but really they're throwing away their vote.
Yeah, it's a throwaway now.
Because it's going to be one of the two main ones.
Yeah.
And that's so discouraging to think that the person that you might prefer is completely lost.
Yeah, he doesn't stand a chance, so you have to vote for someone else.
You have to vote for what you perceive as the least of two evils.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to what you were saying about the mob mentality.
Yes, the mob mentality. This is something that I'll sing to the roofs all day long, as you well know.
Sing to me.
I think I think that it's because I came from Boston, and one of the biggest reasons why I left Boston was because it was so, I don't want to say liberal, but it was so toxic.
Yeah.
In that way. As a conservative, it was toxic to be in Boston.
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything like I wasn't getting, beaten up in the streets or anything.
Yeah.
Most people didn't even know I was conservative. But the way that they talked about the Conservative Party and Christians was hard to deal with, like being a bystander in the back.
Yeah.
It was just a constant, like, okay, I'm just being insulted at every turn. One person once told me that they said, I can't with this, they called people who believe in Jesus delusional. I was like, first of all, even if you're not Christian, Jesus was a real person. He was. I don't care if you don't believe that he rose from the dead. He was still real.
Every religion recognizes that he actually existed.
He was there,
which I think is very funny.
Yeah. but just like on top of, I have a lot of issues that happen in Boston. We'll go over that some other time.
The Boston episode.
It's a whole list of stuff. But a huge thing that it mostly came down to when I was choosing a different school to go to. I was like, I want something with more about my values, where I can have good conversations with people without having to worry about being booted to the curb or just obliterated.
Absolutely obliterated.
By, like, personal insults and stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's why I chose Liberty. And on top of that, it was cheaper.
Yes.
And
they accept everybody.
That's true. I had no issues getting into the school. But yeah, it just came down to I was really excited to see it from the other perspective.
Yeah.
What I wasn't prepared for, and I should have been prepared for it. I think I noticed it when I was, like, the summer before moving here. I started doing my research, and I was like, oh, I know how this is going to go.
Yeah.
It's just the opposite direction, you know? And it bugs me more at Liberty than it did at Boston, because Liberty prides themselves in being above the rest.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna make all these claims of, like, we're better than the rest of you,
holding ourselves to a higher standard of behavior,
you better be up at that higher standard, and they're not. It's a lot of blind loyalty, and it's a lot of not even considering your other options. Yeah. Like, I've told people that I'd vote for a moderate Democrat, because I would. Yeah.
If their policies are more reasonable than what we have right now, 100%.
Yeah. There was a few in Colorado before I could vote at the time. Yeah. But I would have chosen them over the Republican option. No. And it boggles people's minds when I say that.
Like, how dare you?
How dare you insult our country like that? It comes down to
voting for a color, not a person.
Yes. I believe in the two-party system, not in the color system.
No. I'm not red, I'm not blue, I'm purple.
Yes, I'm independent all the way.
Yeah.
And this school has just solidified that for me.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to have different beliefs here without being judged immediately.
Absolutely. Which, again, I'm very grateful that I'm at this school. Like, I absolutely love my program. I love the dorm system, like the dorm setup. Love my roommates.
Yeah.
I really can't complain. Yeah. It's a phenomenal setup, especially for how affordable it is. But there's a lot of blindness, both politically and religiously here.
Yes.
I've heard more than my fair share of stories of people bashing people that even just have a different strain of Christianity than them. Like, they grew up in a different denomination, and it's like you're treated as if, oh, like, you're just a fool. Like, look at you. Same thing with if you have a different political standpoint. There's so many people, they cannot fathom someone voting differently from them.
Yes. It's wild.
It's Christianity is really just being Republican here.
Yeah.
And it's really, I think that I can't even say Republican now, I think conservative values tend to align more with what Scripture talks about. But I think they've taken it too far. They've taken it much too far.
Yeah. Well, it's all or nothing, too.
It's all or nothing.
Because you could have someone who's almost entirely red, but has one blue belief, and it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, I think it was Sage Steele, the ESPN host from not CNN, from ESPN, who she came for Convo. And I remember one of the things, she was talking about all these people that she's interviewed, and she mentioned interviewing Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And the amount of grumbles that she got from that, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, it was, like, that convo, so many people stopped listening after that. I was like, that's obnoxious. She has this great story, and she was talking about being an ESPN host, and I loved how she talked about her dad's fight against race and racism going after the military.
Mm-hmm.
That's so great, but between that and the Joe Biden concept, the public perception of her combo was so different than others.
Yes.
Because
she mentioned a name.
Yes.
Or as a news reporter.
Yes, or because she talked about something that people see as a left-wing talking point.
Yeah. And that's also a conversation because Liberty has a very large... I can't even say it's majority white because there are a lot of European, like transfer students. So it's not like white American.
It's just white.
There is a decent range of diversity here if you're in the right circles.
It's Caucasian.
It's very Caucasian.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have several friends here on campus who have very different backgrounds from me.
Yeah.
And it's the fact it's people can't fathom the fact that racism is actually a real thing. It's real. People really do struggle with it.
I don't believe in institutionalized racism for the most part, but like racism exists.
Racism is real. People can be nasty.
Yes, and it's very dumb.
It's very dumb
to be like, no, it's not real. That's it's a talking point.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you start saying that, you're already screwing over the country. Yeah. Because there's a whole group of people who have to deal with this thing that you refuse to believe is real to protect your political ideologies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Where are you going to go with this? You know? Yeah. It's just, and I see that a lot here.
Yeah.
And I saw it in Boston. It's probably about equal Boston versus here.
Yeah.
But it disappoints me so much more here.
And again, because I think it's really interesting that you have, because I mean, Liberty is the first and hopefully only school that I've been to in person. Mm-hmm. And for you, like coming from essentially the polar opposite of Liberty and coming here and seeing that they're so similar in the way that the mob mentality works, but it's just the opposite. It is discouraging in the sense, like, I mean, it's proof that people are just people. Yep. Regardless. Like, you're no better than, you know, somebody who votes differently from you just because you think you have higher morals when your behavior is the exact same. Mm-hmm. You might have higher morals in the end run, but if those morals don't inform generous behavior...
Yeah, and if they're reflected in this bad of a way...
Exactly. And especially when you're in an environment that is promoting, like, training champions for Christ. Yeah. How are you representing Christ?
Exactly. That's why it's especially disappointing to me, because they have this backbone.
Yeah.
And the lore that they pride themselves in. And
Jesus who modeled unconditional love. Yeah. And it feels very much so, it reminds me, I don't remember where in scripture it is. I should probably have the verse available for people to fact check me, but there's a portion in scripture where the Pharisees are all grumbling and complaining about Jesus, saying, why does he eat with the sinners and the tax collectors and the prostitutes? And he says, you know, Christ, he didn't come to save those who are already righteous. You know, like a doctor doesn't come for people who are healthy. Mm-hmm. And, of course, he wasn't calling the Pharisees genuinely righteous. Yeah. But it's the mentality of, he's coming for the people that are broken. And I feel like there's such a clique mentality here of, I'm going to be with and work with and associate with people who already think like me.
Better.
Because we have a higher morality. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, sure, you've been saved by the Lord Jesus Christ, but are you going to do anything about it? Then if you don't do anything about it, your faith is dead. The book of James is all about that. And if you can't treat people with basic human decency,
we're getting nowhere.
You're getting nowhere. Yeah. And I would stand that it makes you worse than the other side. Mm-hmm. Because you have the knowledge that says that you have to do something. Yes. You have been told that you need to care for the orphan.
There's a responsibility.
Exactly. You've been held to a higher standard of love for others. And that standard doesn't extend to people who don't know Christ. No. As soon as they enter into his kingdom, yes, they are going to be held to that standard. But until that point, like, they're just people being people. Yeah. But those of us that are familiar and acquainted with, like, Jesus, like, we are held to that higher standard. And if we're not living in it, I think that our punishment is going to be great for that.
Mm-hmm. And this is a lot about the side of the political aisle that prides themselves in being Christian. Yeah. Obviously not everyone, but a majority of people who say that.
They associate Republican with Christian.
Yes, and they're living it wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's so upsetting. And I say all the time, and I'll say it again, there's a reason why people hate us, and it's not always false.
It's not always false.
Like, it's understandable.
It is very understandable. And that was something I learned over this summer. Again, I was working a job where I was the only Christian. Yeah. And I didn't go around parading my faith, not necessarily because I was hiding it, but also, like, I knew that the moment I mentioned I was Christian, like, I just, no chance of connection with these people.
Yeah.
And so I would rather live my faith out than parade it around in someone's face. Have your own opinions on that. I think you can only convince somebody if there is a relationship there first. You're not going to win hearts by just talking to a stranger and telling them why they're going to go to hell. That gets nobody.
No.
Like, you're not going to get anywhere with that.
Like, I'm sorry, what?
It's like, excuse me? And so I really value, like, trying to live in a way that emulates Christ, you know, like being an ambassador for the faith that I live by.
Yeah. And
so I really just value listening to my coworkers, and again, very interesting perspectives, because they were very different from mine.
Yeah.
And, one of my favorite coworker, just different generation than me, like, different background than me, but she grew up in a very Christian equals Republican household.
Yeah.
Like, very, very strict, very Baptist, and not inherently hating on Baptists, but just, like, the culture that's associated with that. That's kind of what I'm trying to paint the picture of. And she had such a hatred for Christians because she perceived Christians as Republicans.
Yeah.
And she had very democratic values. She was extremely liberal. And because of that, she rejected an entire faith, even one that she grew up with.
Yeah.
And I love this person. She was phenomenal to work with. But I know so many people that would see her on just appearance, and they would automatically shoot her down and consider her beneath them because she's a sinner and she's not a Republican and she's not a Christian. And there's so many people in the school that wouldn't entertain a conversation with her because she doesn't think like them. And that's just not the way that it's supposed to be for the church. No. There's a reason why I struggle with the American church. I don't think the American church is biblical.
That's fair.
I think that it is Christian. I think that they are a part of the church. I don't think they've strayed that far. But they operate with so much exclusivity that it's a lot like a cult sometimes.
That's fair.
It's a religious institution and not a genuine functioning faith.
Yeah.
And that is very, very apparent on Liberty's campus. Like, you can tell very easily from looking at people if their faith informs their behavior or if their behavior is what is controlling their faith, kind of thing.
That's so fair.
And the people that let their faith inform their behavior, it's very rare. People tend to lead with their political and social ideals and then use that to interpret the Bible, and that's wrong.
Yeah, like, I'm a Christian second.
Yeah.
Which is a wild idea because...
Wild idea.
Those morals that you get from Christianity should be why you're voting the way that you do.
Yeah. Your faith should inform the way that you act, and not the other way around.
Yeah.
Don't read that verse out of context kind of situation. Like put that back where you found it.
Yeah.
And be willing to see things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because your perspective might not be right.
Or at least not fully right. I don't think any perspective is fully right.
No.
And people that's why fail to see that.
You should be in a constant search for truth.
Yeah. Which is why I think at the end of the day, I was talking to Wendy about this. Because someone mentioned after the debate ended, someone was like, I think Texas is going to succeed from the United States. We're talking about, like, the South is going to become their own country or whatever. And
I would not be surprised.
I don't know. That idea is mind-boggling to me. I think it frustrates me that everyone's like, this is the worst that the country has ever been.
We had public lynchings 100 years ago.
Like, legit, I'm like, this is not we're not in a good place right now, but holy crap. First of all, what an outrageously first world problem to have. You know?
I know.
Like, I think that there's things that need to be improved and stuff like that. And I think that either way, we're going to be screwed over in some way no matter who becomes president. Because no matter what, the country is polarized. And you have people who are... I don't agree with it. I don't think they're right. But people are fearing for their lives or they're fearing for their livelihoods because of the person in office. I don't think that that's fair to say on either side.
No.
But I understand the fear. And it's going to control a lot of people. And so you have these issues. But holy crap, if you think this is the worst it's ever been, that discounts so much of what this country and the people in it have gone through.
For real.
Like, that's very hard to say when you look at the Vietnam draft era. Or the Civil War. Or the Civil Rights Movement. Or... like, just the beginning of the country. You have all these, the civil, like, all these different things, and it's just mind-boggling that this is where we draw the line. And I think that...
We're such a bunch of snowflakes.
Exactly. I think if Harris becomes president, I'm just gonna pull myself up by my bootstraps, put my hat down a little bit lower, and just keep chugging through life. Yeah. We will survive.
We will survive.
We will survive. It's gonna be hard, and my bank account may take a hit. But
it will take a very big hit.
Yes. But at the end of the day, I just... that's life, and that is the American political system. Yeah. That's what it was built for. I don't have to like, and I will never like everyone who enters the office, but it is constitutionally the right of this country to have who they vote for. Yeah. If there's, like, you know, hanky stuff on the side where things are getting a little bit sketchy, I don't agree with that. You're like, that's, you know...
Don't be dealing under the table on us, and also don't be tweaking ballots.
Yes, of course. But in just the most basic level, on principle, this country has the right to elect who they're gonna elect. Yeah. That is how that works. Yeah. And people who are like, not my president, yes, they are. They are your president.
And that's where ironically, I live in a very random, like, conservative bubble in the middle of Colorado. I actually stand by this. Colorado is pretty conservative. Yes. But the cities make it blue.
Because there's just so many people there.
But the rest of it, it's very rural. So it's a lot like Oklahoma, actually, in a lot of ways. But there are so many flags that I've seen just driving to and from cities, just in rural places, that, like, the F Biden flags. Yeah. And I, for frame of reference, not I
don't know what that was.
She just spilled water all over herself. I'm not laughing at the flags.
That was,
but no, like, my issue with that is that it's whether or not you like the person that's in office, it's still a political figure.
And they should be respected.
Even just a basic level of human respect. Yes. And that does not look like that kind of anti-advertising. Yeah. So I've always hated those on either side.
Because, I mean, I was raised, you respect everyone that you meet or that you don't meet. I don't care who you are. Basic human decency, basic Christian decency would
They were made in the image of God.
Yes, and you have to respect them for at least that. Yeah.
And that's the same argument for all the people that, regardless of how you feel about Trump, all the people that were so upset that the shooter missed. It goes the same way. Why are you wishing for someone to be dead?
Yeah. I don't care what side of the aisle that you're on. That is a human life, you know?
Yeah, it's a human life.
Yeah, and yes, that's a great point. But even just on, like, a more simple scale of the F Biden flags, it comes down to, first of all, they're your president. Yeah. Second of all, there's not malicious intent there. He thought, well, I think that he was, the Democratic Party thought that they were doing what was right. Yeah. And that's where their morals lined, and they thought they were helping people. I don't have to agree with that. I may disagree with how they did it and how effective it was, but they're not villains. No. They're just doing what they thought was genuinely right.
Now, that might not go for everybody in Congress.
No. But as a majority, the people vote for who they think is going to be better off for the country. And I just, like, you have to respect that as a whole. Yeah. And I don't think that you should be saying F anybody. No. And it's such a polarizing concept, and it's so sad to see our country devolving in that way.
It's very discouraging, especially as somebody who's in the next generation of adults, the next generation of professionals.
Yeah, I'm like, this is what we're inheriting.
You're going into, both of us are going into slightly politically twinged fields. You're going into criminal justice. I'm going into social work, and you're gonna deal with people on both sides, and a lot of people who have done terrible things and are in terrible places. Yes, and I don't think those people that either of us are going to be working with, I don't think they're going to care at all who's in office. No. They just want to know, am I going to get justice for the situation I'm in? Yes. What's going to happen? You're like, they're over there, they've stolen something, or they have a disorder that has affected the way they behave, and now they're, under criminal charges. They are in deep, deep poverty, and that's driven them to extremes. They are dealing with addiction. Those people, they don't care
in the White House.
They don't care.
And, they don't care who's sitting in the White House. And we putting the people in the White House don't care about them. It feels like sometimes.
We live in a place that is so incredibly independent that we've forgotten mercy.
Yes. And it's starting to feel every man for himself these days. Yeah. And that's so scary.
It's very scary.
Especially because, this summer I worked in jail. Yeah. And I don't know. Sometimes I just stand back and I'd be like, people don't understand how this works.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that they're affecting.
Yeah.
There are certain things that look great on paper, but as soon as you take a look who's inside of these jails and the lives that they've lived, and how all of these things have repercussions in their life, it changes everything for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I've seen it a lot in my ethics, because for people who don't go to Liberty, a lot of different departments here, like law, social work, criminal justice, not all of them, but a lot of them, they have like an ethics class that's specifically catered towards their degree, which is so cool. Like, you had a social work ethics class last semester. My criminal justice one this semester. We have a friend in law who has his like law ethics this semester. I think it's so smart.
Yeah.
It's so smart, and it's so important to have. But I've really noticed in these, because the best part of it is sometimes he starts almost every single class period with some debate.
Yes.
Like, he'll talk about something, put it out into the ether, and he'd like, just talk. And I've really noticed that I've started taking a more independent, left-leaning, like, position versus everyone else. Yeah. I agree with a lot of what everyone's saying, to an extent.
But they take it too far.
And when everyone in the class is just nodding their heads and agreeing with it, I'm like, absolutely not. They have to see the other side.
It's almost forcing you to go further than where you actually stand, just to provide
be the devil's
balance.
Advocate.
You just have to provide some balance.
Yes. If only so they get it in their heads, like, oh, this, I didn't even consider that.
Yeah.
You know? And I really, really enjoy it. I really, really enjoy that class, and I love doing that, because it opens up the barrier for myself as well as other people to see there's other perspectives, and they have an equal amount of effect on lives as my own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, say what you want about Liberty, the academics are phenomenal.
Yes, I
agree.
The
teachers are phenomenal, and the coursework has been carefully curated.
Yes, it's really, really good.
It is an excellent school academically.
Yeah.
And I'll live and die on that hill.
That's fair.
But no, like, the ethics class, mine, he never opened with like a debate subject per se, but he'd always have these very like hot button questions that he'd start off with, just to see where people were thinking.
Yeah.
And the one that shocked me the most, because I mean, let's be honest, social work is mostly girls.
Yeah.
Just all of the people pleasing, like, I can fix him girls.
That's so sad.
Yeah. And my favorite question that he brought up, he was, you're on a walk in the woods, and you see, like, there's a river right next to you, and you see there are two people, or like two things trapped in the river. One is Hitler, and one is a puppy. Which one do you save?
Wait, like baby Hitler or just Hitler?
We asked that. He said, I'm not going to tell you until after you choose.
That's so funny. Okay.
And so many people chose the puppy. Because obviously, Hitler was a terrible person. I don't think anybody is going to be like, woo, Hitler, my guy. You know?
Yeah.
And so many people chose the puppy. But ethics, from the framework that is used, the right choice is to save the human life. And you never, and that was the reason why he didn't tell us how old he was.
Yeah.
If it was a baby, if it was Hitler as a baby, would you have saved the baby?
Versus adult Hitler.
Versus an adult.
And that's a messy decision to be put in.
Can someone, and that really comes down to, is the color of somebody's skin, the gender that somebody is, the way somebody looks, the age that they are, is that enough to change your decisions regarding
the value of human life?
Exactly.
That's hard. That's rough.
And that's something that I really wish I saw more here on campus.
Yeah.
Especially considering the Christian values.
Yeah. Having the willingness to ask yourself the hard question.
Yeah.
And actually sit down and think of the answer.
Exactly.
Like, that's missing on this campus, and that's missing in general as a whole in this country.
Yeah. We've lost critical thinking.
Yes, because this politics and the debate of who's who in the zoo should never be an easy thing.
No.
And I think you said it best when we were talking about, right after the end of the debate, you said it's very unfortunate, and I think it's very heartbreaking that nobody tuned into this debate to choose a side.
Yeah.
Everybody already had their side.
We were just coming to watch the fireworks.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And hopefully get some legislation, some plans, which we didn't. But, and I think that, first of all, I think they should have had a debate a whole lot sooner.
Yeah.
Because that might have changed,
real.
And that might have changed something, but it probably wouldn't have changed anything. Because at the end of the day, people vote based on color. And that's so dangerous, and that's so scary. And it's just not a good place to be in, especially where we are right now, because things need to change. I don't care which way they change. Well, I do. I don't, but at the end of the day, what matters most is that things change and people get the help that they need.
Exactly.
And that doesn't even feel like it's a part of the conversation anymore.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's are you right, are you left, are you Republican, are you Democrat, are you
For me
liberal
or
scum
against me.
or an absolute conservative a-hole?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
There's no middle ground.
There's no middle ground.
So unfortunate.
It's reaching a point of inhumanity.
Yeah.
And if you can't look at somebody who has different political values from you and have a rational, respectful conversation, you're the problem.
Yes.
Even if they're not willing to be respectful, you should be able to be respectful to anybody.
Exactly.
Especially if you're somebody who has the values that liberty claims to have. Yeah. But.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good place to leave it. I think that's a very valuable point to make, and I think we said all that we needed to say.
I think we said all we need to say.
And we didn't talk about the animals being eaten. I pat myself on the back for that one.
Good job. We only mentioned the immigrants once.
Yes.
I think January 6th only came up once, you know?
Really going above and beyond Trump himself.
The bingo card. We didn't max out the debate bingo card. Needless to say, guys, whether you find yourself red, blue, or somewhere in between. Purple. Orange. I don't care.
Green.
Vote.
Yes, it comes down to everyone has their own set of values, whatever those are. Everyone should respect that.
Yeah.
But those values are important, and you guys should be proud of what you guys believe in, and everyone should vote based on that.
Yeah.
For whatever side it is, this is your country, and you're all living in it.
Yeah.
And you should have a say in it.
Nothing gets better by taking a backseat.
Yes.
That's what the government wants for you to do.
This country was built by the people, for the people.
So educate yourself.
Yes.
And be willing to take a stand, even if it feels like you're alone in an ocean. Your vote might not feel like it matters, but you're blessed to live in a place where you're even allowed to have a say at all.
And that's such a blessing.
So
just to have the option.
Exercise your right to vote. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do your part. America.